Hello and welcome to Walk the Talk. I'm Shekhar Gupta at New Delhi's India International Center. And my guest this week, Professor Stephen Cohen, the guru of gurus, but more importantly, a great student of the subcontinent. Steve,
thank you, Shekhar. I really appreciate being on your program. I've watched it many times.
Welcome to Walk the Talk. In 30 years of knowing each other, and we've never done an interview, so we better get it right.
It's also a coincidence that this is the 50th year I've come to India. In fact, 50 years ago, we stayed at the India International Center, my wife and I and a little baby.
Which is a fine monument of American academic subversion.
Right. We're trying to undercut India, especially by the monuments to Martin Luther King and Gandhi.
Yes, yes. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Gandhi.
Yes.
And this was an American-built institution, in a way.
It was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation that built one in Japan and one here. And it was always seen, both the Tokyo one and this one, as a window to the world for the respective countries. And it has been. I've come here many, many times over the years, and I've just found it to be a wonderful home away from home. Actually, more interesting than Central Illinois, where I taught as a professor.
Yeah. And your family was very young then. Your children were very young.
I had one baby here the first trip, then one was born that year, so therefore he's an Indian citizen. And my daughter is a professor, studied autism in India. A son is a professor of history of Telugu. So we have a lot of India connections.
Right. So what does change in the subcontinent and what doesn't? 50 years.
Well, there's a lot has changed, especially in the area of attitudes. When I came here in 1963, we drove from Delhi to Patna just to see what the country looked like. You couldn't do that now. But what has changed is attitudes towards the United States, and there's been sort of a roller coaster of attitudes. When I came here, it was right after the war with China, and U.S.-Indian relations were very close. And then the '65 war took place, and we were disillusioned. India was disillusioned, and in a sense, we broke apart. And for a long time, and India then turned to the Soviet Union for weapons. When the Soviet Union collapsed, clearly that affected Indian strategy, and that's one of the arguments I make in the book. The collapse of the Soviet Empire sort of transformed India's relations with the United States. And so in a sense, and also there were economic reasons to normalize with the United States.
That's a new book.
Yeah, the new book is about that, puts it in the larger context. The new book really is based on 50 years of research, because I've been working on this issue for a long time. My first book actually looked at Pakistan as well as India. And I was originally interested in the role of the military in these two countries, why India went in one direction and Pakistan went in the other direction. So I've written books on the Indian Army, book on the Pakistan Army, and the new book is about India-Pakistan relations as such, and the transformation that may happen in the future. It sort of looks ahead 35 years, to make it 100 years of conflict between India and Pakistan.
So tell us about change in our attitudes in India, Pakistan, Washington, and change in attitudes vis-a-vis each other. So there are many variables there.
I think that as a whole, require a couple of books, which I haven't written, but others will have written. In the case of Pakistan, we always believed that the Pakistanis were our true ally. And they would tell us this. And the Pakistani argument was that America has betrayed Pakistan many, many times. There was some truth to that, but clearly it was an exaggerated story. But I think the war in Afghanistan, with American soldiers in Afghanistan, has put paid to that argument.
Right.
I regularly teach American officers in various summer schools and so forth. And about 7 years ago, they started telling me, Professor, I served in Afghanistan for a year. And the people who were shooting at me were coming from Pakistan. They're our ally. Why were they doing this? And I would tell them, Pakistan is playing a double game. They're supporting the Americans in Afghanistan, but they're also supporting the Taliban who are fighting us in Afghanistan. And that began, I think, a slow shift in American opinion about Pakistan. And that spread from the military to the conservatives in Congress. And ironically, some Republicans are more anti-Pakistani than the Democrats. It used to be the other way around.
Yeah. Until about 10 years ago, it was the other way around.
Yeah, we needed Pakistan for the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan. That revived the relationship. I was in the State Department there, I could see the process going on. And we wanted to believe what the Pakistanis told us because it was convenient. And Howard and Teresita Schaefer have written the best book about this of all.
I think they talk about Pakistani negotiating style.
Yeah.
When Pakistanis negotiate with America.
Yeah, and their strategy is not unique to them, but it's notable that they tell us what we want to hear, then they do what they want to do. And I found that during the Reagan administration when Pakistanis would tell me what I wanted to hear. And since I knew Pakistan pretty well, they would say, look.
You had a stint at the State Department.
2 years, yeah. 2 years.
Policy planning.
Working for George Shultz, yes.
Right.
And it was an interesting insight into how the government works. And essentially what would happen was that we lied to the world about their nuclear program, and they lied to the world about our involvement in Afghanistan. And one Pakistani friend said to me, that's a good deal. In a sense, from the American perspective, it was.